Neighbors in a small Iowa town were passionate tonight in an effort to keep their elementary school.
The Council Bluffs Community School District deciding whether or not to close the district's smallest school due to low enrollment. 6 News' Brent Weber was in Council Bluffs and has the vote.
The numbers just didn't add up for the Council Bluffs Community School District. Little Crescent Elementary will indeed close at the end of this school year.
Very difficult to do. Nobody wants to do this. And all of us at one point in time behind the scenes have been advocates for Crescent in one way or another.
The unanimous decision to close Crescent Elementary came after about an hour and a half of passionate public remarks.
You are the person that decides, not the numbers, not the way you stack those numbers. And I'm looking for you to represent us.
Keeping Crescent open gives kids and families in Crescent and Council Bluffs a choice. Don't take away their choices.
I am telling you all this because I want the children of Crescent and the community to have great memories like I did. They deserve it. We all deserve to have those memories, not the ones of educators saying you don't matter, your school doesn't matter. Please, I ask you not to close our school.
This isn't the only school district to recently announce closures in December. The Davenport School Board announced 3 elementary schools will close. The president of the state's teachers union, ISEA, said in a statement, unfortunately, the past 10 years of inadequate state funding for our schools, combined with the recently passed private school voucher program, will cost close to $1 billion to implement and will only compound this issue in rural communities across the state.
Even if enrollment stayed flat, we're not being funded by the state where we need to be as a state across the whole, right? So this isn't Crescent specific, this is Constable Schools, this is Rural Central, this is Underwood. We're not getting the funding that the public education system needs.
What's next? Those families will have to find homes for their students, and the district says they will do everything they can to make sure the transition is smooth. On your side in Council Bluffs, Brent Weber, 6 News.
Now, several parents told Brent on the way out of the meeting the fight is not over. But as of now, they'll just have to decide where their kids will go to school next year.